Welcome back to Lecture Highlights, where we try to explain the most important key concepts in economics as quickly, simply, and intuitively as we possibly can. Cost-benefit analysis tells us that we should only do any activity or buy any product if the benefit is greater than the cost. And we should only do more of any activity or buy more of any product if the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. But in order to apply these key concepts, it relies on us correctly identifying and also calculating all of the relevant benefits and costs that are relevant to that particular decision. And a common downfall that we often make is that we tend to neglect what economists refer to as an opportunity cost, when these should be taken into account to calculate the full cost of any activity. So the standard definition of an opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative that you have to forego in order to do any possible activity. So if I decide to go to the gym and spend my hour there, it implies that I can't spend that same hour on any other activity like going for a walk or spending time with my friends. And if I decide to go on holiday for a week, to go abroad, that means I can't instead spend that same week of time working and earning money. So in each of these cases, there's an additional implied, or what economists refer to as an implicit cost or an opportunity cost, which is the value of these foregone activities. So how do we calculate these opportunity costs and how do they impact our economic analysis? These are the key questions that we'll be looking at using some simple examples in this lecture highlight. To understand why opportunity costs really matter and why they need to be taken into account in our decision making, let's look at a couple of really simple examples. So imagine that you're leaving work and you're deciding whether or not on the way home you want to go to the gym. So the cost of entry to the gym is just £2, and therefore the explicit cost of going to the gym is just equal to that cost of £2. Now let's think about what would be the benefit of going to the gym. So to calculate the benefit, we do this willingness to pay auction in our head to work out the maximum price that we'd be willing to pay to spend that time in the gym. So imagine you start at a price of £1 and you keep increasing that price until you reach the maximum price you're willing to pay to go to the gym, and suppose it's equal to £10. Well, that £10 there represents the total benefit of going to the gym in this particular example. The cost we calculated was only £2, so therefore if we apply cost-benefit analysis, the benefit is greater than the cost, and we should definitely go to the gym. But this is now neglecting the idea of opportunity costs because we haven't taken into account the implicit cost associated with our decision to go to the gym. So imagine that the next best alternative to going to the gym would be instead spending that time going and visiting your friend before they go traveling for 3 months. So by going to the gym, you're giving up this additional activity which you value quite a lot. But how do we calculate what we're giving up? Well, ask yourself, how much would you be willing to pay in order to instead spend that time with your friend? Well, they're going away for 3 months and you'd really like to see them, so do that willingness to pay auction again in your head and imagine that you get to a valuation of £50. So the benefit of spending that time instead with your friend is equal to £50, and this is really a cost to you if you decide to go to the gym. So we said now that the benefit of going to the gym is equal to £10. The explicit cost was £2, but now once we take into account the implicit or opportunity cost, the total cost is now £52. So the benefit is smaller than the cost and we should not go to the gym. Instead, we should spend that time with our friend before they go traveling abroad. So what this example is showing is that by taking into account opportunity costs, it can have a big impact on our decision making. And really our decision to do any activity is actually a decision of should we do one activity or should we instead do an alternative activity. And our decisions will then be impacted by the range of alternative activities that we have available and our valuation of each of these possible activities. A second example for how we apply opportunity costs in our decision making is, imagine you're a student coming home for the Christmas holidays and you're deciding whether you want to stay at home for the entire holidays or instead spend a week of that time going on holiday to Spain. So you've had a really difficult semester, you're really quite tired and you really want a holiday, and you value that trip to Spain at, say, £1,000. So that's the total benefit then of the activity of going on holiday to Spain. So now let's look at the costs. Well, firstly, you have explicit costs. So you've got the cost of your flight, you've got the cost of your hotel, you've got the cost of your food and drink. Imagine that all of those explicit costs come to a total of £850. Well, in that case, if you ignore the opportunity costs, you'd make the decision that the benefit of £1,000 is higher than the cost of £850, so you decide to go on holiday. But this is really neglecting the implied opportunity cost. So imagine that you've also got exams coming up in January, and the next best alternative use of your time if you don't go on holiday is to instead spend that time revising for your exams. And you value the benefit of all that extra revision at, say, £500. So how do we calculate that? Well, imagine someone said to you, what would you be willing to pay for an extra week to revise for your exams? Well, that would be that benefit of £500. But we know that revision is not costless. It takes up your energy, it takes up all of your psychological effort. So imagine if there was no benefit of doing that revision in terms of your exam performance, you would need to be paid £100 in order to spend that time revising, to compensate you for the psychological cost and effort associated with that revision. Well, that means that the net benefit then between £500 benefit and £100 cost of revising is a net benefit of £400 benefit that you're forgoing if you decide to go on holiday. So that means that that £400 of value is being sacrificed if I instead decide to spend my time going abroad on holiday to Spain. So if we incorporate this now opportunity cost, we see that the explicit cost was £850, the implicit cost is £400, so the total cost of this holiday is actually £1,250. But the benefit was only £1,000, so now the cost is higher than the benefit, and once we take into account these opportunity costs, we should not decide to go on holiday. Instead, we should decide to spend that time at home. In the last two examples, we've looked at how opportunity costs need to be taken into account when we're deciding whether or not we should do a particular activity. But opportunity costs are also relevant when we're deciding how much of an activity we should be doing, not just our decision of whether or not we should do it. So let's think of an example. Imagine that you've gone on holiday with some friends and you're deciding whether or not you want to call home and let your family know that you're safe and well and that everything is going well on your holiday. So you've arrived at the hotel and you're deciding what is the benefit of ringing home versus the cost. So let's focus first on the benefit. So what would be the benefit of ringing home for just 1 minute? Well, in that very first minute, you could convey the most important and relevant information. You could tell the family that you're safe, that you're well, that there are no issues at all at the airport, and you're having a really good time so far. So that would really put your family's mind at ease, and it's really important that you let them know that you're safe and well. So maybe your marginal benefit, i.e. what you'd be willing to pay for that first minute on the phone, could be £50. What about the second minute on the phone? Well, you want to talk to your family for a second minute, but the information you're conveying isn't as important as the information in the first minute. So instead, you'd only be willing to pay £20 for the second minute on the phone. And for the third minute, it'd be £10. For the fourth minute, £5. For the fifth minute, £3. For the sixth minute, £2. For the seventh minute, £1. For the eighth minute, 50 pence. Formally, what we're saying is we have diminishing marginal benefit. So the extra benefit that I gain from an extra minute on the phone is much, much smaller if I've already been on the phone for a significant amount of time than if it's the very first minute calling home. So now that we understand marginal benefit, we can plot these in a graph. So on the vertical axis here, we've got our marginal benefit, and on the horizontal axis, we've got the quantity of minutes for each level of the marginal benefit. So when the marginal benefit is equal to £50 for the first minute on the phone, then it drops to £20 for the second minute on the phone, and it keeps dropping down due to diminishing marginal benefit. So now that we've calculated our marginal benefit curve, how do we calculate our marginal cost? Well, imagine that calling home is not included in your standard phone tariff. So instead you've got to pay £1 for every single extra minute that you're on the phone. So for the first minute, my marginal cost is £1. For the second minute, the extra cost that I have to pay for an extra minute on the phone, i.e. my marginal cost, is another £1. And for the third minute, my marginal cost is another £1. So in this example, every time I spend an extra minute on the phone, I'm just paying a marginal cost to my phone provider, which is equal to £1. So we know from marginal analysis, we should only do more of any activity if the marginal benefit is greater than or equal to our marginal cost. So now what we can do is add our marginal cost line onto the diagram. So we can see that for minute 1, our marginal cost is £1. For minute 2, it's £1. For minute 3, it's £1. So formally, it's just a horizontal line at that price of £1. So now we can see that we should consume all the way up until the point where my marginal benefit is just equal to or larger than my marginal cost. I don't want to consume when marginal benefit is smaller than my marginal cost because I don't value the extra minute on the phone sufficiently. I'm paying more for a product than I actually value it in terms of the marginal benefit. So using this diagram, we can clearly see that the optimal number of minutes in this example is that I spend 7 minutes on the phone. So this is the optimal rational amount of time I should spend on the phone when I take into account the explicit cost that I have to pay £1 for every single minute to my phone provider for the call. The only issue with this analysis so far, though, is we've neglected opportunity cost. So instead of spending that time on the phone, I could instead have spent that time doing something else, like relaxing on the beach. So imagine that instead I'd rather just relax on the beach, and I value that at £60 per hour, or alternatively, £1 every extra minute that I'm relaxing on the beach. So if I decide to instead not relax on the beach and call home for an extra minute, I'm giving up that extra benefit of £1 from not being able to relax on the beach. So that means that my total cost then for every extra minute on the phone is not just the £1 I pay to my phone provider, it's also the additional £1 opportunity cost that I can't be relaxing and resting on the beach. So this means that my true marginal cost is no longer £1, but it's actually £2. So what we can see by drawing the true marginal cost line onto our diagram is that rather than having 7 minutes on the phone, we should stop at the point where we only have 6 minutes on the phone. Why? Because we've increased the true marginal cost to reflect these opportunity costs. So this just conveys the idea that in this example, I'll spend less time on the phone if I've got some really good alternatives that I would rather be doing. Alternatively, if I don't have any other things that I should be doing, then I'll spend longer on the phone talking to my family at home. So in this example, what we've shown is how marginal benefit and marginal cost analysis are impacted by opportunity cost. Opportunity costs then are driven by the idea of scarcity, not just in terms of the money that we all have available to spend on products or activities, but also in terms of our time. Because by spending our time doing one particular activity, it means we can't be doing another activity with that same particular period of time. So cost-benefit analysis tells us we should only do an activity if the benefit is greater than the cost, but it only works if we really calculate the full economic cost. And if we don't take into account the opportunity cost, we will end up underestimating the cost and therefore doing activities or buying products when we really shouldn't once we take into account the true economic cost. In other examples though, we tend to include costs in situations that we really shouldn't. So if I decide to download a film from Amazon Prime and it costs me £5, and then halfway through watching that film, I realise that actually I'm really not enjoying the film and I'm getting no benefit from continuing to watch it. And yet I might decide, hey, I've paid to download the film, I definitely need to watch it to get my money's worth from paying for the film that I downloaded. But this really isn't rational, because that purchase price for the film is what economists refer to as a sunk cost. And these types of costs need to be excluded from our decision making. And sunk costs is the next key concept that we'll come on to in our next lecture highlight.